18. Anne. There never were such friends as Sarah and the Indian gentleman became. Somehow, they seemed to suit each other in a wonderful way. The Indian gentleman had never had a companion he liked quite as much as he liked Sarah. He tried to invent things to surprise her. She found beautiful new flowers growing in her room, little gifts under pillows, and once, as they sat together in the evening, they heard the scratch of a heavy paw on the door, and when Sarah went to find out what it was, there stood a great dog with a grand silver and gold collar. There was nothing the Indian gentleman loved more than the recollection of the little princess in rags and tatters. The afternoons in which the large family or Ermengarden Lottie gathered were very pleasant, but the hours when Sarah and the Indian gentleman sat alone and read or talked had a special charm of their own. One evening, Mr. Carrisford, looking up from his book, noticed that his companion sat gazing into the fire. "What are you supposing, Sarah?" he asked. Sarah looked up with a bright color on her cheek. "I was supposing," she said. "I was remembering that hungry day, and a child I saw." Then she told him the story of the bun shop, and the 4 pence she picked up out of the mud, and the child who was hungrier than herself. She told it quite simply, and in as few words as possible, but somehow the Indian gentleman found it necessary to look down at the carpet. "And I was supposing a kind of plan," she said when she had finished. "I was thinking I should like to do something." "What was it?" said Mr. Carrisford in a low tone. "You may do anything you like to do, princess." "I was wondering," hesitated Sarah. "You know, you say I have so much money. I was wondering if I could go to see the bun woman and tell her that if, when hungry children come and sit on the steps, or look in at the window, she would just call them in and give them something to eat, and she might send the bills to me. Could I do that?" "You shall do it tomorrow morning," said the Indian gentleman. "Thank you," said Sarah. "You see, I know what it is to be hungry." The next morning, his carriage drew up before the door of the baker's shop. When they entered the shop, the woman looked at Sarah, and then she smiled. "I'm sure that I remember you, miss," she said, "and yet—" "Yes," said Sarah. "Once you gave me 6 buns for 4 pence, and you gave 5 of them to a beggar child," the woman broke in on her. "I've always remembered. Excuse the liberty, miss, but you look rosier and, well, better than you did that. I am better, thank you," said Sarah. "And I am much happier, and I have come to ask you to do something for me." "Me, miss," explained the woman, smiling cheerfully. "What can I do?" And then Sarah made her little proposal concerning the cold days and the hungry children and the hot buns. The woman watched her and listened with an astonished face. "It'll be a pleasure to me to do it. I am a working woman myself, and cannot afford to do much myself, and there are sights of trouble on every side. I've given away many buns since that day, just thinking of you, how wet and cold you were, how hungry you looked, and yet you gave your buns to the beggar girl as if you were a princess." The Indian gentleman smiled at this, and Sarah smiled a little too. "She looked so hungry," she said. "She was even hungrier than I was." "She was starving," said the woman. "She told me that." "Oh, have you seen her since then?" exclaimed Sarah. "Do you know where she is?" "Yes, I do," answered the woman, smiling. "Why, she's in that back room, miss, and has been for a month, and such a help to me in the shop and in the kitchen. Her name's Anne." She stepped to the door of the little back room and spoke, and the next minute a girl came out. And actually it was the beggar child, clean and in good clothes. She had a nice face now, that she was no longer a savage, and the wild look had gone from her eyes. She recognized Sarah at once, and stood and looked. "I am so glad," Sarah said, "and I have just thought of something. Perhaps Mrs. Brown will let you give the buns and bread to the children. Perhaps you would like to do it, because you know what it is to be hungry too." "Yes, miss," said the girl, and somehow Sarah felt that she understood her, though she said so little, and only stood still and looked after her as she went out of the shop with the Indian gentleman, and they got into the carriage and drove away.